What up, Screen Fiends? I'm GB, and you're tuned in to Headz TV, where we like to discuss all the wonderful things appearing on your movie and your TV screens. So, in this episode, we're going to discuss The Walking Dead and all 6 of the communities that are currently on the show and how they're different and the differences between the leadership of those communities. So, yeah, right now there's 6 communities, which is 2 more than the comic book had at this point in time. Not that that matters. We have Alexandria, we have the Kingdom, Hilltop, Sanctuary, Oceanside, and now the Junkyard. So we got 6. So let's start with the most obvious and the one that will probably take the least amount of time to talk about because it's who we spend most of our time with. And that's going to be Alexandria. So we'll talk about current leadership, of course, not Deanna, but Rick. So Rick is the type of guy that I would consider the American leader, the go-get-em, the whatever it takes to survive. We got to do what we got to do. We got to put our foot down. We can't take no shit from nobody. That's Rick to me, then his style of leadership. We got to do what we got to do. If that means doing dirt, that means doing dirt. If that means doing the right thing, that means doing the right thing. And, you know, that kind of sums up America to me where, you know, no matter where you are in this country, you got to find a way to survive by any means necessary. And that's Rick. And Alexandria as a whole, you know, they're mostly good people because they're led by a good person. You know, if they were led by a scumbag, who knows who from Alexandria would turn into, you know, a savior type of character. So, you know, Alexandria's pretty easy. It represents America, in my opinion. And that's why a big part is, you know, them fighting for freedom and all that, you know. And that kind of leads us into the next one we're going to talk about, which is the Kingdom. Now, the Kingdom is an interesting one because, let's talk about Ezekiel. This is a guy who I would say leads similar to somebody like Martin Luther King. And I don't just say that because of the bedtime story he told Benjamin's little brother, which was a Martin Luther King speech if you didn't pick that up. But, you know, or like Gandhi, these leaders who lead by peaceful means that feel like, you know, diplomacy is the best course of action. You know, he values his people and wants to keep them safe. In order to do that, he puts on this front of King Ezekiel and the whole big theatrics and all that. And, you know, the people really buy into it because it's a symbol of, I guess, hope of humanity, of what we are. I'm sure there's many people in the Kingdom that know he's full of shit, whether he told them or not. But I'm sure there's other people that are like, well, you know, maybe this guy's just crazy. But either way, he's keeping us safe. But he's an interesting character because if you look at him, he seems to deep down want to do something with, you know, against the saviors, but feels like he can't because losing even one more of his people or one more of their limbs, it would be a travesty. I didn't really talk about this in the review, but, you know, he gives that awesome speech in just yesterday's episode, episode 10, about how, you know, his people, they gave a lot for what they have. You know, they gave limbs, they gave lives, so they lost a lot in their fight, just like everybody has. But, you know, you can understand each one of these leaders, if you really look at the way they're thinking about the world and looking at the world, you can kind of understand where each one is coming from, right? Maybe I'll try and touch back on that again at the end of the video. So there you have it with the Kingdom. You know, he might put on a front and he might seem like a bitch to you, but look at his kingdom. Look how they thrive. Look how many people there are and how happy they're living. And how it seems like everybody's got a place and a purpose and something to do. Whereas, you know, I'm sure that's hard to find in the zombie apocalypse, you know? But he's an effective leader. You may not agree with him, but, you know, his people are safe. You have to admit that his people are safe. He even says the saviors dare not step foot inside the kingdom. So there you have it. All right, now let's move on to the hilltop and bitch ass Gregory. Oh wait, let's touch back real quick. So Alexandria also, I would say, is warriors. They're killers. They're fighters. And the kingdom, the same thing. They're warriors, killers, and fighters. But Ezekiel does not allow them to be the warriors, killers, and fighters anymore because of whatever losses they've already experienced. And then you have the hilltop, who's farmers. You know, Gregory says it. Oh, yeah, what are you going to do? Go to war with a bunch of sorghum farmers? You know, so he has no faith in his people. But that's the differences between the three communities so far. So we have Gregory, who leads in a way that it's hard to get behind. And it's hard to understand. And I'm not saying I agree with Gregory. I think he's the biggest bitch and pussy on the show. I love the character. I love the portrayal. You'll hear me say that on and on. The actor does an amazing job, Xander Berkeley. But Gregory's approach is just, I'll stay out of it. You know, I might be remembering my history wrong, so please correct me in the comments if I do. But I believe there were times in the past where the French were kind of like that. Well, like, you know, we'll just stay out of it. Or maybe it's not the French. Maybe I'm thinking of somebody else. But they remind me of that. That's who Gregory is to me. He represents that type of leader who's basically like, oh, well, they're not causing me any problems, so I'll just stay out of it. It's your problem. Leave me the fuck out of it. But the way he goes about it is in a very demeaning and very, like, bitch way. He's very nose in the air. Like, he's better than everyone. And that's kind of, you know, he doesn't even know his people's names. So he kind of leads like your typical king, a lot of kings that you read about, where, you know, it's all about living in the big fancy place and having the best booze and the best food and all the women, you know, because you're the man. See how Gregory's always trying to get into all the ladies' pants. And he kind of falls back on the fact that he's the leader and can do something for you. So, you know, he's a real scumbag. But he does remind me very much of the typical king or royalty that, you know, you hear about or see on TV. The hilltop, you know, they don't seem to be very adept at fighting, but there's a bunch of them at least that are willing to learn. And they do have a blacksmith. That's, I guess, who's making all those spears. In the comics, they have a blacksmith. So they could definitely provide some weaponry as well. All right, now let's move on to the Sanctuary, which is probably the most fun to talk about. So I'm going to try not to take too much time because I just love Negan and the way it runs. So, you know, Negan is basically like a Nazi, right? He's that type of leader, a dictator, a subjugator, someone who runs in, destroys everything, and then basically puts you to work. You know, a lot of people compare him to, like, you know, a mob guy, how he's got, like, extorting people. But to me, he's more like a dictator than anything else, to where it's, you know, his way of the highway, and his way is aggressive and vicious. Visceral, as Gavin put it in the last episode. All right, so Negan's people are, it's like two communities in one. You have the people that work directly for Negan. Those are all the guys you see out and about. The tough guys. The ones getting, you know, running up in Alexandria and with the weapons and the guns, doing all the dirt. And then there's the people that live in the Sanctuary and contribute to earn points. So I guess, you know, if you're able to sew, you make clothes. If you're able to bake, you make bread or whatever. And they have to trade them up for points. So this makes the Sanctuary a very volatile place because it's every man for himself. And if you pay attention to history, leading that way is never a smart move because eventually you're leaving yourself open to revolution. To, you know, the numbers rising up and saying, I'm not putting up with this shit anymore. Now, I'm not saying that's what's going to happen in the show. I'm not saying that's what happened in the comic, if those of you who haven't read it. But it's an effective way to rule, But in the long term, I feel like it's definitely ineffective, even though Negan seems to be very, very good at it. But he leads by fear, and he's got everything. That's the thing. What all the other communities have, Negan has a little bit of everything, right? He's got the fighters, he's got people that can farm, he's got people that can do everything. So the sanctuary really is the best place to live in our area of The Walking Dead right now. The community, I mean, that's next to the sanctuary, I would say, is probably the kingdom. But the kingdom just doesn't seem to be as safe as the sanctuary is. So that's the only reason why the sanctuary gets a notch above, you know? And Alexandria's a great place to live too, with the generators and all that too, but the factory just seems, the saviors just seem like they have everything in there. So, I don't know, but it's definitely one of the more interesting communities. Let me move on. I don't want to make this video too long. So we got the 4 main communities out of there. You know, we got Rick, the fighters, killers, assassins. We got, but still good people. We got the kingdom, good people. They have fighters. They seem to be able to do a lot of different things in the kingdom. It's a thriving community, but I'm not going to say that Ezekiel's pussy, but the way he leads is in a scaredy cat manner. And then we have the hilltop, the farmers, who aren't really much fighters at all, and Gregory wants no part of it, but the people there do. And then we have the sanctuary, the dictator, run by fear. And now with the last 2 communities, we don't know too much about. So some of what I'm going to say is speculation. It's not anything we have any evidence of. Alright, so we have the Oceanside, who were attacked by Negan. All the men, boys, supposedly were put in a lineup and all shot in the head or killed or however it was done. I believe she says, Natanya, I think her name is. I believe she says they were all shot in the head. So you have them, who they seem to be led by fear, but not the same kind as Negan. This isn't fear of Negan within the community like that, like they're fearing him coming and doing this. They fear Negan because of what he already did from them and what he already took from them. And because of that, they're pretty strong because they don't trust anybody, and, you know, they'll shoot you on sight, which could be a good thing in the zombie apocalypse if you look at it as a community by community basis. That's all we really know about them. You know, they seem to be a bunch of tough ladies. They have an armory, which I'm sure is going to come in handy. I'm sure you all feel the same way, that armory is going to come into play eventually. So who knows if they'll join willingly or not. Oceanside is not in the comic at this point. They come in much later, and they're they're a very small deal. So, but I believe that they're going to definitely come into play. If not in a soldier capacity, in a weapon capacity. Like, they may not be willing to risk their people, but they may be willing to give up some of their weapons. And then we have the most interesting of the bunch, because they're so fresh and new, and that's the junkyard, or the scavengers, as the lady who plays Jadis said on Talking Dead. She called them the scavengers. So, man, it's hard to say. So this is all going to be speculation. Why do they talk like that? Only a little over 2 years in the apocalypse. Why do they speak the way they do? I'm going to guess that it has something to do with her and the way she leads. And her maybe feeling like the least words the better as far as communication. Why risk someone hearing, or a walker hearing? Or why just waste time saying more than you need to say? But I definitely think it's a leadership thing on why they talk like that. I don't think it's like they were re-educated or brainwashed or anything like that. Now, I would love to see the wolves come back into play, but I'm not too sure if that's going to happen. It would be great if they came back into play having to do with the Junkyard Group. I would really, really, really like that. But I don't know. Let's see. You know, I'm not even going to talk about the Wolves because they're gone apparently. So, but I can't wait to see where it goes next. I hope you enjoyed the video. That's just my take on the different communities. I tried to get through it as quick as I can, so I might have left out some stuff I didn't want to. But hey, what are you going to do? So, definitely, if you like the video, you got anything to say, you want to join the Screen Fiend fam, show me some love down below. That's the end of the video. You guys have a good night.